Thank you, Mr Speaker. Tonight I rise to remind the House that the claim of right for Scotland is a principle which recognises that the people of Scotland have the sovereign right to determine the form of government best suited to their needs. This is a right well established and was first set out in the Declaration of Arbroath in 1320 and most recently endorsed by the House in the Commons in July 2018, a debate which I was privileged and proud in which to speak. In Scotland, this House is not recognised as sovereign. The people of Scotland are sovereign, and they are angry that this House, this government, is overreaching itself by trampling all over Scotland's devolution settlement, with repeated and concerted attempts by the Tory benches opposite to shout down members of these benches when we dare to speak up on behalf of Scotland. The debate tonight comes at an extremely critical time for Scotland, with the UK on the cusp of withdrawing from the European Union, something which the people of Scotland rejected by a significant majority, but is to be imposed upon them against their expressed democratic wish. However, if you accept the European Union referendum result in England, despite all the cheating and law-breaking that we know went on, if you accept that result, because the democratic will of the people of Scotland is different from the democratic will of the people of England, then too bad. Scotland is to be ignored, dismissed and dragged out of the European Union anyway. And with the Westminster power grab and the lack of consent given to this disastrous Brexit by the Scottish Parliament, the devolution settlement has been trampled underfoot by this government. So much for a so-called union of equals. So much for Scotland leading the UK, not leaving the UK. How can this be a union of equals when the democratically devolved legislatures in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have all refused to consent to this Tory government's withdrawal agreement that will damage our jobs, it will damage our prosperity and our relationships with our European partners. This Brexit, which may yet deliver a no-deal scenario, is to be forced on Scotland against her will, exposing for all to see the myth of the so-called union of equals. In the general election a few weeks ago, the Tories in Scotland unequivocally urged voters in Scotland to vote Tory to stop Indie Ref 2. We in the SNP stood firmly and proudly on a platform of saying no to Brexit and saying yes to the people of Scotland's right to choose their own future. And Scotland, by and large, I'll just finish this point. Scotland, by and large, did not vote Tory, but voted SNP in huge numbers. The SNP won 80% of the seats in Scotland, and yet this government still refuses to accept that the people of Scotland have made their choice. They want Scotland to have the right to choose its own future, because no one is better placed to make decisions for Scotland than the people who live in Scotland. Now,
I hear what the honourable lady is saying, but in the week of the general election in my constituency and other constituencies, SNP candidates told voters that this election wasn't anything to do with independence. They were to vote SNP if they were against Brexit or if they were against Boris, but it had nothing to do with independence. But yet at 10 o'clock on the 12th of December, it was all to do with independence.
This is the kind of willful fingers and ears that we have come to expect. Not everybody in Scotland who voted SNP is yet persuaded of the arguments for independence. But what they do want, Mr Speaker, is the right to choose. Now we know that the Minister will say, he will trot out well-worn phrases, the lily-livered lines about the SNP not winning over 50% of the popular vote in the election in 2019. However, he must consider that the first-past-the-post voting system, which he supports, is the one in which we are working. And further to this, The SNP in Scotland has won the council elections in 2016, the Holyrood elections in 2016, the general election in 2017, the European elections in 2019 and the general election in 2019. And each of these 5 elections were contested on one proposition by the Tories opposite, and that was vote Tory to stop IndyRef 2. The Tories in Scotland, Mr Speaker, the Tories in Scotland never mentioned any policies, they never discussed any other issues, they simply said vote Tory to stop IndyRef 2. And yet still, Mr Speaker, they could not get close to beating the SNP in these elections. For anyone to deny the democratic right of Scotland to have a say over her own future path, to try to shift the goalposts on what winning an election actually means or what winning an election actually looks like is deluded. Doing an impersonation of King Canute, trying to hold back the tide, simply shows the desperation and arrogance of this government, who thinks that if it can just ignore the pesky Scots for long enough, they will just give up. We will not give up. We in Scotland have a right. We have a right which we claim in no uncertain terms to choose our own future, and we will not be denied. And if I'll let Mr.
Mr. Speaker, can I commend the Honourable Lady for her hard work on behalf of her constituents and how much it means for her to come back to this House. I have spoken to her beforehand and she understands what I'm going to say right now to her. Does the Honourable Lady accept, while many people have voted for her because of who she is and her hard work, and for the party members and colleagues here as well, that many people who vote Scots Nats, I'll say a certain proportion of them, do not accept for independence? Does she accept that?
What I accept is the people who voted for the Scottish National Party want to have the debate and they want to have the choice, and that matters. It's our job to persuade them over the line.
So the honourable gentleman for Strangford, who comes into this debate with a degree of interest in it, will not be aware that there are 3 Scottish Tory members sitting from Murray, from Dumfriesshire, Crystal and Tweeddale, and from Berwickshire, Roxburgh and Selkirkshire. Can the honourable lady say whether their majority has been up or down on the basis of their message to say no to IndyRef 2?
Well, the honourable member for Glasgow East will know that I do not wish to intrude on private grief, but I have noticed, but I cannot help noticing, Mr Speaker, that each of the 3 Tory MPs from Scotland, each of them have rushed as though their behinds were on fire to leave the Holyrood and Scotland's Parliament to come to this House. And I have to question why that might be. And if not winning over 50% of the popular vote is the only tool in the government's arsenal to deny the people of Scotland the right to choose their own future, then where is the democratic mandate for this government to press ahead with its version of a damaging Brexit? A Brexit born out of a very narrow referendum result, with the Electoral Commission itself saying that that referendum was characterised by law-breaking, cheating and dishonesty. In last year's general election, the Tories won 43.6% of the vote. Now, if we follow the UK's government logic on IndyRef 2, then this Tory government most certainly does not have a mandate for its version of Brexit either. And therein is crystallised the unsustainability of the Tory government's position, to which even, and this might be a surprise to some of the members opposite, the government's position is so unsustainable that even some frontbench Tory MPs are admitting it secretly off the record. For the government to continue to hold on to the unsustainable position that Scotland should be denied its claim of right to exercise its democratic will to determine its own future, this will and can only deepen the current constitutional crisis. There is no doubt that England and Scotland's elected representatives have quite different and diverging constitutional mandates, but be in no doubt, each mandate is as valid as the other. Now let me turn to the tired and frankly insulting mantra trotted out too often by the benches opposite. The people of Scotland voted no to independence in 2014. They did, there's no denying that. And it seems, according to the beleaguered and very absent Secretary of State for Scotland, it appears It matters not how the people of Scotland voted in the past 5 elections or how they may vote in future elections. The Secretary of State has apparently decided that independence for Scotland can only be put to the people of Scotland once in a generation, regardless of any democratic choice they may choose to make. Summarised as, you'll have had your democracy then. This is quite frankly absurd and silly talk and insulting to the people of Scotland. What the Secretary of State for Scotland has revealed is either he knows nothing of or does not subscribe to the claim of right for Scotland, or he has clearly not read the Smith Commission, which is odd for a Secretary of State for Scotland, and I wish I could say I'm surprised about that. I hope the Minister standing in tonight for the beleaguered Secretary of State for Scotland, I hope he does not, when he gets to his feet, insult the House or the intelligence of the people of Scotland by saying this once-in-a-generation nonsense. I would draw the Minister's attention, and he really ought to listen to this because it's really important. I would draw the Minister's attention to the final report from the Smith Commission, more specifically, Chapter 2, Section 18, which clearly states, and I quote, "It is agreed that nothing in this report prevents Scotland becoming an independent country in the future, should the people of Scotland so choose." That seems pretty clear to me, and the former Secretary of State for Scotland, no wonder he's blushing.
He's incapable.
This unanimous verdict of the Smith Commission was an implicit agreement that a second referendum vote was and is constitutionally valid. It is inconceivable, Mr Speaker, inconceivable that this would have been included in the final published report if the members of the Smith Commission, a bare 2 months after the first vote, thought the matter had been kicked into the long grass for a generation. Because democracy is not an event. It is a growing, living, evolving, organic thing, and an expiration date cannot be put on it by this or any other government. And let's not forget, the appetite for a second independence referendum is easy to understand. The people of Scotland voted no to independence in 2014 because they were fed lies, mistruths and fear. They were told that in order to remain in the EU they'd need to vote no. They were told that if they voted yes they'd lose their pensions. And I don't have time to go through all the broken promises and the lies. But this time, when the independence referendum comes, and come it will, Scotland will make a different choice. Because the people of Scotland will see through the snake oil salesmen and the spivs who perpetrated these lies last time round. The people of Scotland will say to people in the opposite benches, when the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do, sir? I urge the Minister to remember the words of the former Tory Prime Minister John Major. No nation can be held in a union against its will. The myth of the union of equals has been hopelessly exposed, and the people of Scotland realise that Scotland's future must be as an independent nation. And I urge this government to do the right thing and respect democracy. Every day of denial only feeds the fire of independence, and for a referendum on this issue, the momentum for which cannot be stayed. Now, I understand that the benches opposite, when they're full and even when they're empty, I understand that this government fears an independent Scotland, building a more fair, more equal, more compassionate, more outward-looking country on their doorstep. But that's really a matter for them. No Westminster government has the right to choose Scotland's path, and how dare it even try? And I will just end, Mr Speaker, by saying this government must prepare itself. Prepare yourselves for what is coming, because your arrogance, the arrogance of this government, its intransigence, its contempt for democracy, mean it shows that the UK is fatally disunited and is about to lose Scotland. A sovereign people will not be silenced. We will not go quietly. The clock is ticking and this union's time is up, and well, this government knows it.